and I thought this would be a really fun idea to revisit Pet Sematary, because I think that not all Stephen King film adaptations are that good, but Pet Sematary kind of stands out as one that I think really was well done, both as an adaptation and even more importantly, just as a really good 80s horror film kind of classic. So it maybe doesn't get celebrated as much as it should, but it should. So why don't we get started? So maybe just both of you, if you could sort of talk about how you first came to the project. Mary, like how did you...
Unique window into Hollywood. Mary and I met. She directed it was your first music video, I believe, the Tom Tom Club. Do you guys remember the Tom Tom Club? Yeah. It was an offshoot of the Talking Heads, and a great band. And they made a song. Two of them, the Tom Tom Club, Tina Weymouth and Chris France, went to school with Mary at RISD. And they were friends and allowed Mary to make this music video. And I was the ingenue lead in it, and along with Judd Nelson. And it's such a cool video. It's hard to find, and I don't know if it's on YouTube or
I'm sure that if it exists, it's on YouTube.
It's a very, black and white, really interesting video, and a very cool song. It's called As Above, So Below. And Mary and I just really hit it off. And I remember her saying to me on the set of the video, one day we're going to make a movie together. Now, the reason why I love that is because it actually came true. And most things that people say in Hollywood don't come true. There's a lot of talk and very little action. So she is true to her word. And when Pet Sematary came along, she said, there's this great part, you have to play it. And I had to go through, testing but fortunately got it. So.
Someday we're going to
make another movie. You guys
made another movie.
Yes, we have.
We're going to make another one soon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mary, when you were talking about kind of how you were speaking to Stephen King, you had mentioned that it was kind of a personal story for him. And I'm just kind of wondering, what was Stephen King like to work with as a writer? What was your relationship with him like?
Well, for Stephen, for me, was an absolute dream because we just got along really, really well. And I've told this story before, but I don't think I've told it to any of you guys. I don't know. I really like to do improv work with actors, where you let the actors, you just give them something, a subject or a sentence or something, and then they just take it and riff off of each other and see where it goes, or what do you think happened before this scene, or how do you think the scene would continue if it continued? And the best actors, the actors who are best at improv don't say no. They say yes and, or yes but. If you say I hate you, they don't say no you don't. They say yes and I hate you. Or they say yes, but you don't know what I'm. They continue it. They don't stop the action with the no. They continue the improv, and take it someplace. And Stephen and I working together was a lot like that, because if I would have an idea for something that maybe wasn't exactly in the script or a piece of dialogue that I thought, I would talk to him about it, and he would never say, no, it's my script. He would say, yes, and we can do this, and we can put something else on top of it, and then we can, and it would my little idea would suddenly just be a whole new thing. It was very cool creatively to work with Stephen King, and he's I think he's one of the geniuses of our age in terms of writers. His body of work is amazing, and I think that he himself is not recognized because of the genre that he usually chooses to work in. I don't think he's gotten the recognition as a serious writer that he will eventually get. Just like like Edgar Allan Poe or someone like that, who's recognized as a giant of 18th century literature. Or is it 19th century?
It is true though. So I can remember.
I think I missed 19th century.
I remember in high school, a lot of us used to struggle with our teachers that we wanted to write our book reports and everything with Stephen King books, but no, it was not allowed. But maybe, yeah, maybe in 100 years.
It will happen. It will happen. His body of work was really amazing.
Can you think of anything, maybe some conversation, or was there a part of the film maybe that King wanted to include in the film that you kind of had conflict over? Anything that you wanted in, you wanted to take out, or you wanted in, you wanted to take out?
You know, working with a writer is sometimes very difficult for a director. There's almost always some way that you, as a director, see it that's not the way the writer has seen it, or the writer will write something down that you just, I mean, sometimes I'll read something and I'll just go, I don't know how to film that. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't, I can't do it. We have to change it. Stephen and I really didn't have any conflicts. I never had a conflict with him. We plotted together against the studio. Don't print that. You know, we were like bad children in the basement, you know, making mischief. I really didn't have conflicts with Stephen, and I can't say that about every relationship I've had with writers, but it was true with Stephen.
One of the kind of unique things about the film is that it's a horror movie that, in a way, one of the main characters is a small child, a young child. So what was it like working with the actor that played Gage? And this is kind of a question for both of you. What was it like working with him? And was it sort of uncomfortable at all, in the sense that it's a very dark story that involves a child doing a lot of really horrific things?
Well, I'll start and pass it on to Denise, because we had slightly different. We came at it from slightly different directions. First of all, I always thought of him as an actor. I didn't think of him as a child, as a baby, and I hired him, I cast him because I knew he could do the part. And in fact, Paramount, the studio, really wanted me to hire twins. They didn't really care about an actor for that part, talent, but they just wanted two bodies. Because you can, a small child like that can only...
thinking overtime.
They were thinking overtime. And a small child like that can only be on the set for, I forget, the law changes every year, but it's something like 4 hours a day. And so, and you have to be, it's very strict. You can only have them on the set. And so the people who are paying for a movie like to have twins in a situation like that, so you can go for an 8-hour day. You have one for 4 hours, get rid of him, bring in another one. You know, they're interchangeable. But I knew from the casting experience that these twins that they were bringing in weren't interchangeable, you know, and that Nico really had something kind of remarkable and special, and he wanted to do it, and he was an actor, and he learned how to hit his mark. He learned, you know, I would say action, and he would do it. He was just that child, that actor that wanted to do that part, and he was lovely to work with. And yes, sometimes I did feel like I had a huge responsibility in terms of his, you know, mental health as an adult with some of the stuff that we were doing, and I tried really hard. I mean, to put it all in an attitude of pretend or play, and never have him in the same room with any of the horrific stuff. He would always, all the bloody stuff that he's maybe supposed to be looking at or anything like that, that was never there. And where I was very fortunate was that the actors that he was working with, and the two people he worked with the most were Fred and Denise, were really professional, you know, caring, ethical people. And I'll turn it over to Denise at that point. I mean, you know, she has a dark side. I knew she wasn't going to hurt that little boy.
Not too badly. You know, one thing Mary, her concern was great for this child, and it was apparent to all of us. And she did something that was brilliant in that she tried to shoot the film in sequence as best as she could, because what happened, what that allowed for was this, was time spent, you know, in the good parts of the movie, you know, when the family is healthy and the family is whole and the family is having fun, and you know, the brightness of this film is still happening before it turns. So, you know, we were allowed to bond with this, with Miko, and gain his trust, which was really important, that he felt safe with us to be able to then get to the parts that were difficult, you know, for any actor to play. So by the time he got to the dead Miko, the dead Gage scenes, you know, he was owning the set. You know, he was, Mary, what do you want me to do? Mary, you know, I'll do anything for you, Mary. You know, it was a lot easier, and that was incredible for you to do that. And again, we were all very concerned and very professional, and held that very, very strongly throughout the film, and wanted to make sure he was always good. And I tell you, a long time went by before I saw him again as an adult. And I think the first thing I did was, you know, hugged him and said, "Oh my God, you're normal, you know, you're not insane." And you know, he's just this absolutely wonderful young man. So it was good, all worked out.
We can take questions from the audience if anyone has any.
Hello, thank you so much. Could you tell us any Fred Gwynne stories from the set?
Oh boy, couldn't
Or just your favorite one?
I don't know, Denise, you want to start with your favorite one?
Let's see.
I'll have one too.
Well, I mean, I just loved that, excuse me, he was this, you know, had this just very dry, wicked sense of humor, Fred, and was a very honest, grounded, very unpretentious actor. You know, he had an extraordinary career, and was very forthright about it. You know, he was like on his third incarnation of a career at this point, and was very humble, and but you know, with this sly, wicked sense of humor. And my favorite part of him, he also was this children's book illustrator and writer. So, you know, this wonderfully large, gruff persona, this deep voice, and this, you know, strong, was this little, you know, just a soft little kitten inside. You know, it was just, it was just so dear.
Well, this was, Pet Cemetery was my second feature film. I had just directed a film called Siesta that was starring Ellen Barkin and some other wonderful, Jodie Foster, Martin Sheen, some wonderful actors were in that other movie. And Ellen was very, very demanding about whenever she did any of her scenes, everybody that was in the scene had to be there. And she would never like do a close-up reaction or anything unless the other actor was right there, you know. And one time, this is kind of digressing, but it pays off, I promise. We're like doing a scene, and she was supposed to be listening to Martin Sheen, who plays her husband. She was listening to him on a phone on an answering machine, and she's sitting at a desk listening to the answering machine by herself in the scene. And she insisted that Martin had to be there while she listened to him on the answering machine, you know? And so, you know, Martin did it. He was a really good sport. Anyway, this is what I had sort of cut my teeth on. So at Pet Cemetery, I'm very respectful of Fred. Fred's, you know, Fred, like Denise said, he's done everything. Musical theater, like, whatever you name it, he's done it. So whenever he had a scene with Gage, I would always ask him, you know, are you gonna need Gage for this? Unless it was something horrific, you know, and he was like, finally he just said, "God damn it, Mary, I don't like to work with kids, I don't like to work with animals, I don't care whether he's here or not, let's just shoot it." No, get it out of here.
I was going to ask you what church was like to work with.
Well, Mary loves cats. I just wanted to, we had to beg to get in the shot when church was around.
I actually do love cats.
Is there another question?
When they were doing Pet Sematary too, were you like approached on that, or?
I directed it.
Or you no, dude, here.
But it's a good question, and it's just kind of like, it's sort of a unique film because it's a sequel to a movie that's based on a book. There's no book, so how did you kind of approach it, a brand new story, you know, like that?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Yeah.
Honestly, if I had been allowed to come up with the story, I would have come up with a different story. I would have had it be Ellie's story, because she's the one who survives. And it just seemed very obvious to me that a sequel to Pet Sematary should be Ellie's story. And she should come back to town and we should find out, you know, what went down in her, you know, her life, because that's a pretty horrible thing to live through. And I would think there would be some demons, and it's, both of her parents are like roaming the woods undead. There's some good stuff that could happen.
They just wanted me back in that makeup.
I wanted you back in that makeup, Denise, with the bugs crawling out of your ears. But you know, at the time, which was, you know, almost 18 years ago, for Pet 2, and it's still true today, unfortunately, the idea of a movie that had a teenage girl at the center of it was, they didn't think of it as being strong enough at the box office. I mean, that's changing, but not quick enough, actually. Maybe, who knows? We should come up with that idea.
Ellie's story.
The story of Ellie, yeah.
It's a good sort of lead into something else, and that's that the fact that as a female director was something that, well, to be honest, I think it's still rare to have a female horror director. And nowadays, in recent years, we've had something where people are talking about like women in horror, and they celebrate women in horror. They have females that are involved in the horror genre as directors and writers and everything like that. But in 1989, there was no such thing. So I don't know. I guess it's just, my question is sort of like, what are your sort of thoughts on that, on women in horror, and is it sort of a good thing? Is it a good movement?
Well, I think that women have dark thoughts, and traditionally in most societies, women are the keepers of the spiritual world. You know, they're the ones that we're the ones that give birth. You know, we believe in something that you can't see for 9 months, you know? Of course we believe in spirits. Of course we know there's a spirit world. I don't know, it doesn't seem strange to me at all. Some of the, you know, the most spiritual, fantastic people I know are women, you know, though. So why not? I don't know, I guess,
do you think it's difficult, though, for
a woman to direct a horror movie? Well, it depends on what you think a horror movie is, maybe. But because horror movies usually deal with death in some form, whether it's violent death, or whether it's a life after death, or whether it's some kind of spirituality that exists beyond the, you know, the physical life. You know what? I don't understand why people think that. And I have never understood why women are not considered equally as men for anything. And I'm sorry, I just don't understand it. I just don't understand it. I'm not saying that women are better than men. I'm just saying I don't understand why we're not considered as equals. I don't.
Thanks for helping. I was trying to win them over. So. Are there any other questions? Sir?
I know the original ending didn't have the scene with Rachel and Lewis in the kitchen. So was that something that you decided on, or the studio decided on? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Denise wanted that makeup. I couldn't get enough of that drippy, oozing eyeball. Actually, the scene was shot. That was originally, we shot it, and then the film wrapped, and we all went home. And I guess they looked at it and wanted it more graphic,
It just
right?
wasn't, we shot it that she came back. We just didn't, it wasn't quite as graphic in the original footage as with the bugs crawling out of her ear
And more ooze.
More ooze.
Actually, the ooze, the goop when he's kissing me, that was the real, like it went down my cheek and into his mouth. Like they wanted something along those lines. You know, and usually the studios are always going, it's too much, cut it. And they went back and said, you know,
well, they said,
make it more so.
we could do something a little, and I'm like very into it.
Yeah.
Let's design something really cool for Niecy to do.
Yeah, it was, she loves torturing me. Loves it. Loves it.
What was that makeup process like? Because it's, you know, one of the great things about 80s horror movies is the fact that it's such a good time for makeup and special effects and slime and blood and everything like that. And that's such a great effect with that stuff.
No,
Cranial
it's
fluid.
true. It's just, you know, there's no CGI kind of stuff. I mean, that was Lance. Was it Lance Armstrong?
No.
Wait a minute. Before he started writing, he was this amazing makeup artist.
You see what you learn when you
Wait a minute,
concentrate.
Lance Alexander? What the hell is his name? You guys should know.
Somebody look it up on
Yeah, it was Lance and David Anderson. God, I knew it was some, you know, A word. Lance Anderson. Yeah, he designed, you know, some of that makeup. He wrote for U.S. Postal, Maine, and did that makeup.
That's why he's divorced. Oh, sir, you had a question.
I was wondering if you ever found out why George Romero passed on the project and what you thought of your finished film.
Repeat the question, sir.
Oh, the question was, why did George Romero pass on the film and on Pet Sematary, and do you know if he had an opinion of Mary's version of the film?
I think the idea that he passed on it is his story. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't know he passed on it.
I actually didn't know that either.
I'm sure he's full of regret. I can tell you that much. Yeah, I have an inside track.
Is there a different Stephen King book where either as a director or an actor you thought, you know, I'd sure like to be part of that project and bring that book to the big screen?
Well, I always wanted to direct The Stand. And I still do, because I don't think the television version, the version that was on television is very good. And there's just so much more there. But I don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, if you know somebody that wants to.
Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
If there was another pet project, would you be willing to take it on?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think they've been talking about a remake for a long time now. I'm not the right person to do the remake, because if they want to remake it, somebody should bring a, you know, it should be a different point of view. But I've always wanted to do it as Ellie's. I've always wanted to do Ellie's story, and this has never happened.
Did you shoot on location? Was it a small town that you actually shot in, or?
Yeah, we shot in Maine. It was Stephen's wish. In fact, it was his command that the movie be shot in Maine. And I was talking to somebody about this earlier out on the floor. You know, wasn't the cheapest place to shoot it. Usually it's the people that are financing a movie want to maximize their dollar and shoot it in the cheapest possible place. And you know, we had to bring a whole entire crew up to Maine. It's difficult to travel up there. You fly into Boston, you switch planes. It's just like when Rachel has to go home. You know, it takes a long time to get there. But I think it adds a lot to the movie that it was shot in the. We scouted forever. We looked at every house. We looked at every tree. We looked at every cliff. We really went to great lengths. There's a lot of great footage that's not in the movie because I just love the land landscape so much. There's a lot of footage of Denise hiking on trails. Hikes I took you on.
Loved it. Yeah, I was going to say that. Thank God we shot this film in Maine, because the environment plays a great part in the film. It gives you a true sense of the place, and you begin to, you're affected by that as actors, in your environment. It just would have been a whole different vibe shooting this on a soundstage in Burbank, to act like Maine. I mean, the air smells different in Maine, and the people, you begin to have a kind of way, the people speak differently in Maine, and everything about it is
the lobsters taste.
The lobster.
You get sick of eating lobster.
I actually turned lobster down for the first time in my life in Maine. Yeah, so it was very special to be there, and it flavors and colors the film in all kinds of ways.
Yes, sir.
Upon completion of the movie, did you show it to the studio and Stephen King? Was there any type of kind of feedback, or did you possibly have to kind of change anything?
Well, whenever you direct a movie for a major studio, you have to show it to them. Because they paid for it. And the director's always gets a period of time to cut the movie and turn in something called the director's cut. And after that point, unless you have final cut, which very, 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 very few people do. I think Steven Spielberg is probably one of the only people I know that has the final cut. At that point, you're still involved as a director. You're still involved in the edit, but the studio starts to give you notes, and they always give you notes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. There's always somebody that's their job to give you notes. So I mean, they give you notes. I think the biggest note, of course, from Paramount was it was too long. We had to, because we had shot all those scenes of Denise hiking in the Maine woods, her legs, and so she looked great. There's a lot of emotion in that hiking. We made Dale carry the baby most of the time, but anyway, we had to cut it down.
Became an alpine film, nature alpine.
Maybe we can get rid of some of that. And then there were some other controversial moments. One of the things that I had to really work hard to keep in the movie was the funeral scene, because I love that moment when the coffin comes open and you see his little hand, and that's in the book, and it was like, to me, it was like the essence of that, of him coming back from the dead, was that little foreshadowing of the coffin was going to open and the little hand was going to. I don't know. For me, it was an iconic image, and I really wanted that in the movie. And the studio didn't like the funeral scene. It was a little too raw. The emotions, that fight between Dale and the actor who plays Rachel's father. It's kind of raw, and that they felt that it was taking the movie, away from horror movie and into something else that was more like drama, and I just felt like it was so important to the movie to have that scene, and I loved the rawness of it. So I had to recut that scene over and over and over again, and I had to move it around, because sometimes I find as a director that if people don't like a scene, sometimes it's the scene on one side of it or the scene on the other side of it that's not working. And if you change the way you go into the scene or the way you come out of the scene, then all of a sudden that scene will start to work in a better way. And so you always should, when a lot of people are not liking something that I know is important, and I try to figure out why they're not liking it and get them to like it, rather than than the obvious fight about, no, it should be in there, no, it shouldn't, yes, it should, no, it shouldn't. You have to make a certain number of people like the film if it's going to go out, for a broad release, because you're aiming for a lot of people. Look at all the different people in this room that must like the film a little bit, or why would they be here? And it's a really broad audience. Pet appealed to a broad audience, and you know, I'm happy to go through that process as long as I get my way at the end of it.
Well, I'm interested in knowing what they thought about the ending, because the ending is it's a very, very dark ending, and you know, there wasn't a lot of movies, even horror movies, that had that dark of an ending at the time. And if there was any kind of controversy with that.
Well, we sort of already talked about it in that, I mean, it was decided that the dark ending worked, and in fact it could be even more. I guess maybe that's what, well, the reason there was that movement to make it more graphic, because maybe it was a little too dramatic at the end, a little too like much about the love story between Rachel and Lewis, and you know, Paramount wanted to push it back more into the horror vein, which I didn't think was a bad idea. I didn't fight that idea at all. But I never thought about it until you just asked me. So.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I wonder if we might be able to look forward to a complete version with all of your footage that wasn't used. Do you look forward to ever releasing all of that?
You know, not really. I think it works as it is, and I don't feel. I have other films that that I've directed where the people who have the power have made cuts and changes that I don't like, and I'm not happy with it. But I think once you're happy with a film, the length of the film, you know, is an important, the time that you spend watching that film, that's the rhythm of the film, that's an important part of the success of the film. And I think that Pet has a good rhythm, and I wouldn't look to change that. I really wouldn't.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of just including that as extras, you know,
oh, yeah.
you can look at.
To that, there's a documentary that is being made and almost finished, I believe, or in the process, a really great look at the making of Pet Sematary. And it's called Unearthed and Untold, the making of Pet Sematary, I believe. If you come by our table, we have little cards from the filmmakers. And they have, you know, a site and a website and a Facebook page and all that crap. And they are phenomenal. I mean, they have stuff that we didn't even know existed. Interviews with all of us, and they have footage that was shot by local townspeople in Maine when we were doing the movie, and you know, it's just this elaborate documentary, all that they're passionate about making, these two filmmakers. So we'll tell you about it, and that probably has a lot of me hiking. It's become my hiking. It's Denise Takes a Hike is the subtitle.
And it has the love scene in it too.
It does? You didn't shoot that, did you? Me and Fred, you want to really Rachel does Judd. I'm sure in some weird, you know, YouTube video that's going on somewhere. I don't know.
It's another idea for the sequel.
Yeah.
If it exists, it's on the internet. Any other questions?
It seems like there's been a lot of zombie stuff lately with Walking Dead and everything, and I think Pet Sematary kind of has its own take on that, which came from King, obviously, but I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? It's just how, when you look back now as to kind of before it really got big is on zombies, you know?
Yeah, we were doing zombies before they were cool.
I know. I didn't think of it that way at all, but true.
Well, the theme, you know, for me thematically, the two things for me always were, you know, obsession, and the idea that sometimes dead is better. That you may want to bring someone back from the dead, but it's not a good idea. You know, it's just really not. I don't have any more to say on that subject.
Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Were you involved in the process of casting the actor that played Zelda, and was there a specific reason why a male was cast instead of a female?
Well, that was my idea. I really, casting's a big deal, and some directors leave the casting of the secondary parts or extras, pretty much in the hands of somebody else. But I really like to get very involved in it, because it helps me to understand who my characters are, and it's a big deal to me. We couldn't find a little girl that I thought was scary. Little girls that age are sweet, they want to be princesses, and they just don't have angles yet. They're not. I guess if we looked hard enough, maybe. But they just kept bringing me sweet little girls, sweet little girls, sweet little girls. I mean, how can I make this really scary and weird? And I want, and then I just had the idea. Well, if we cast a young boy, there'll be something off about it, that no one will know, because we're not going to reveal it on screen that he's a boy. It'll just feel off. I wanted Zelda to be creepy, and she was creepy.
I think that is, of course, besides casting me, the most brilliant piece of casting in that movie. I mean, it just takes it to another level, and I have people continuously coming up to me and saying it scarred them for life, seeing Zelda. They can't even look at it. I mean, grown men, crying in the corner like babies.
Yep. Yes.
It says that Bruce Campbell was first choice for Lewis. Did he turn it down, or did you just find better casting?
I don't think he was really first choice. I mean, he was a candidate.
Do you remember any?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I did not. I'm learning. Do you have any memory of or did he ever do a test, or?
He was a candidate. I don't think he read for the part, though. I'm almost positive that he didn't. I mean, I think he's a really cool actor. But I felt like that at that point we'd already cast Fred Gwynn, and that, I mean, obviously different, very different physical. They look different, very different physically, but still there's a certain sameness to their charisma. I wouldn't, it has nothing to do with whether I think Bruce Campbell is a fabulous actor. I felt that there was there wouldn't be the same chemistry. The chemistry was too similar in those two guys. I don't know. I just didn't see them together. But I think Bruce Campbell's really cool. He was on the list. There's a long list.
I got to play with Bruce Campbell I got to play his love interest in Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
So it worked out.
Yes, we came together eventually. So I didn't want you to go away feeling, sad by that. I did get to, kiss him and rub up against him.
So is he really groovy?
Is Bruce really groovy? Wow. John Aston was pretty groovy. I got to tell you that. Do you guys know about that TV show, The Adventures of Briscoe County? Yeah. That was like a little ahead of its time, very steampunk in its vision. But it was a cool role. I got to play the sheriff of no man's land. Literally no man's land. And then these two guys, these cowboys, drifted. But I digress.
It was on my list. Anyone else? Well, one of the cool things about Pet Sematary to me, of course, was the music, because it features the Ramones. And it ended up kind of spawning, I think, one of the Ramones' kind of best songs of all time. I know some people don't like it, but a lot of people really love it. The Pet Sematary song, one of their most iconic songs. And I'm assuming that it was King who brought them to the project, but I'm just wondering if, what you thought about the use of the music in the film, and if got to meet them and what they were like and that type of thing.
Actually, Dee Dee Ramone was one of my best friends. I mean, I've known the Ramones for a long time. That was actually, I brought them to here. I mean, I think it may have been one reason I got the job, because it was so ecstatic that, that I knew the Ramones. You know, at that time was directing a lot of music videos, and I never actually directed one for the Ramones, but they toured a lot with my friends from the Talking Heads that we were talking about earlier, Tina and Chris and David Byrne, and also Debbie Harry, who's a good friend of mine, and also Annie Lennox, and I knew them a lot, and I toured all over Europe with the Ramones. I loved Dee Dee so much, and I just, any chance I can get to say his name in front of a group of people that might have loved him also, and just like send out a little call to him wherever he is. Dee Dee, we still love you. We do. We still love you. I mean, he was like a child. He was a dark, talented child. I loved him. I don't want to be buried in the pet cemetery. I don't want to live this life again. You should read about his early life. He had a really tough life.
Okay. And are there any other questions? Okay, well, let's give it up for Mary.